morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say thank you all for being here today for our November 21st Policy Committee meeting. I will remind everybody to turn off their cell phones, and the emergency exits are located on the side and back as well. To start the meeting, I'd like to go ahead and do roll call. Ms. Cadetsy, if you wouldn't mind calling the roll.
Ms. Josie Bonhart.
Here.
Ms. Pat Bradford.
I am here.
Ms. Stephanie Crable.
Here. Thank you very much. Now is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we're at the moment to approve the agenda, and I will make a motion to do that at this time.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to add something to the agenda for discussion.
To amend the agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
So you make a motion to amend the agenda.
I do.
I'll second it for the sake of discussion. The floor is yours, Ms. Bradford.
Does anybody else hear
I'm
this
having a hard time adding something. We don't even say what we're adding.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you
Can we do something
seconding?
about the echo?
Nothing.
There's an echo?
Anyway, it's the Parents' Bill of Rights involvement, 1310-4002. I'd like to discuss that and how and when we're going to adopt it.
I would like to speak to that, committee. I did not put that on this policy meeting. It's the intent, after speaking with our central office staff and Dr. Faust, that it will go on the December meeting for policy here. And the reason being is because some of the mechanics, as far as the implementation process for consistency across the districts, are not ready to be rolled out. Not all of them, but is it the website? Like, oh, okay.
Both of them are.
I know they're both working on it. And so the discussion that I had with the superintendent prior to whether we put it on this policy meeting or December was, if it was on the December policy meeting, would we be able to walk through and share with the public and parents the whole process? So that was the justification for not putting it on this November policy. It'll be on December's policy meeting. And with that being said, I had spoken to the chairman about potentially a need to have a specially called meeting so that it can be in effect, because my understanding, and please jump in if I'm misunderstanding, with the technical corrections, the implementation date is January 1 to abide by the law. And so that would be the justification.
Well, and it's also my understanding that we have to pass a policy, but that the handbook that we're putting together is not due until the first day of school of the 24-25 school year. So yeah, I don't feel a need to rush this when we have till January 1st to get it passed.
And Madam Chair?
Ms. Bradford?
My concern comes with, the law was passed in August, and some aspects of it, I feel like we are not where we need to be. I've looked, and let's think, Charlotte Mecklenburg, Durham, and Cabarrus County. I looked last night for 4 websites that had the Parents' Bill of Rights there for parents, and I can't find it on our website. If it's there, please show me how to find it, because it's supposed to be easy and very accessible. And on their websites, there were different placings, but some of it was just really clear. We don't have that yet, and it's been months, and I don't understand why. And if we're going to be in violation of the law, then I'm going to bring a proposal to change the calendar law and just take the heck with the law. I don't think that we are where we're supposed to be on these things. I'm very concerned about it. I really want I want the staff to have all the time they need, but we got these draft policies on 1310 back in the fall update, and then we got them again, and there was a note in there from the person from North Carolina Association of school boards that said, you haven't implemented this. And I don't understand why we can't implement it. And I'm concerned.
Ms. Oh, go ahead.
First, may I ask your authoritative source that you're using?
I'm sorry?
Your authoritative source that you're using
For,
for the Parent Bill of Rights? You were saying that we're not in compliance, so I was wanting to know what authoritative source that you're using.
well, the fall update and this recent update, both of these were, one of them, it was said it was absolutely required. I've got them right here. This
But
is
I
the
also-
that they gave us.
But I also sent out the technical corrections that, to the board. I sent out the information from the state superintendent, the information that you're looking on websites. That's different districts have different things that are going on building. As we just stated, we're building ours. It's just not out there yet. If you think about it, we want to talk about following the law, I'm more than happy for you to take a stance on the calendar. You won't get any pushback from me because, that would make life so much easier for all of us. But when it comes to the Parent Bill of Rights, as I had shared with you, Mr. Wildeboer, and the attorney, that there was an update on the 13th from the state superintendent.
Yep.
We also have technical corrections that the North Carolina Association for Superintendent School Administrators met with the author of the bill. And he did, in fact, go back and make some technical corrections because they thought that the bill would have passed, meaning that the general's the legislature would have had the budget passed before. With all of those corrections, there are things that are enacted. So if you go back in and you look at our policies and if you compare them to what is being asked, there are several things in there that we are already doing, have always done. We've always given parents access to their grading. We are actually, if we look at the survey, our board has actually put the survey information in place. There are a list of items, so I'm not sure where, that's why I was asking, where is your authoritative source and what you're asking that we're not doing, because we actually are. It just doesn't say Parent Bill of Rights. What we're saying is we're able to do all of the things. We have to put a policy in place, and once that policy is enacted, then everything up until that date falls in place. The board also has to vote on when for some of these things, and it says back on here, it actually says, regarding Part 2 of the law, the expectation is that PSUs, or public school units, will approve local policies by January 1 with the understanding that the full development of parent guide to student achievement will take longer to develop. Based on our readings of the provision in the budget bill, House Bill 259, Section 7.81 and its letter D, North Carolina Department of Public Instruction is operating under the following assumptions. Governing bodies of PSU public school units shall establish policies that are effective no later than January 1, 2024. PSU's public school units shall provide the Parent's Guide to Student Achievement to parents, students, and school personnel no later than the first day of school after January 1, 2024. Based on school calendars across the state, the first day of school is in August for traditional calendars and July for year-round calendars. So we are doing what the law states.
Well, let's look at the timeline. Today is November. If we don't deal with 1310-4002 today, then we will deal with it in December, and it will come to the January board for approval if everything goes well. Is that correct?
So no, what will happen is, as a chair stated, she's asking for or actually she can or I can call for a special board meeting. The board can actually vote on a policy and enact it immediately.
Okay.
So I'm operating in the purview of the superintendent. That's where I promise you, no one sitting up here has license that's on the line, but me. So when we're looking at authoritative sources, I'm following the guidelines by our superintendent, our state superintendent. I'm following the guidelines by the author of the bill. I'm following the guidelines by making sure that our policies and speaking with our chair of the policies that we are ready, because it would just be, we can vote today, nothing will be ready. And then what will happen is backlash. So why would we do backlash when we're not ready? However, if a parent has a question, concern about anything, we are ready to talk with the parent, and I don't think we have to have a policy to say that if, and I'm just going to use you as an example, this Barnhart parent comes and says, hey, I want to see the curriculum that my child's being taught, we will schedule an appointment with her teacher and do that.
Thank you for that. And committee members, we're at 10 minutes on this, so there is a motion and a second to amend the agenda to add this. So with that, I'm going to call for a vote on the amendment to add 1310/4002 to the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Nay. That brings us back to, I had made a motion to approve the agenda. Do I hear a second? To approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor to approve the agenda? Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Brings us to the approval of the minutes, and I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Second? Any discussion with that?
Yes, there is. Ms. Barnhart, the questions that I have are, let me find my notes, sorry. In number 5, letter E, policy 4300, I believe that we need to have some words that reflect why the committee held this policy, and because of the words, because of the intent to strike the words, a system that ensures equitable treatment of all students. It's my opinion that minutes do not have to be transactions, or transcripts of the meeting, but somebody should be able to look at our minutes and understand what happened. And right now, when we're just saying that it was held in policy after a brief discussion, I would like those words to be put in so that we're clear on what we were talking about. And the same goes for number 6, letter C, policy 7205. I would like for the minutes to reflect that we did not heed the directive of the entire board to revisit letter Z of the policy and seek input from instruction and student support services. We just took it and said, motion, on we go. So I think our minutes should reflect that we chose not to talk about the policy.
Ms. Bradford, do you have any feedback?
I disagree.
Okay, so
So respectfully, may I ask you to address her as why you disagree?
I will do that if you, would you like to elaborate, Ms. Bradford, on that?
DE, policy 4300, student behavior. We did discuss it. We went to full time on it. We set the time in advance of how long we're going to talk about things. We set the time. We did discuss it. And basically the same thing for 7205. We set a time limit. We put it on the agenda. We discussed it. Now, sometimes when we allow 5 minutes or 10 minutes and one person talks the whole time, it doesn't make for a very cohesive discussion, but that happens. But we still have to keep to the time limit so that we're responsible to not only ourselves but the staff in terms of getting through this meeting. So I felt like, I read the minutes and I felt very comfortable with what they said.
Ms. Barnhart?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm not debating that we didn't talk about it and that we went over our time and point of order. I'm not debating that. All I am asking is that our minutes reflect some of the substantive content that we did talk about for that period of time. One of those being striking the equity statement for 4300, and the other being in 7205, we did not discuss at all. We said, motion, second, move on. We didn't discuss it, and the entire board asked us to. And so if you were not at this meeting, you would not know any of that. And our minutes, I think, should be more reflective of some of the detail of our conversation. That's what I'm asking.
Madam Chair, is not 7205 on our agenda for today?
Yes, and as well as 7300.
Point
There's
of
a
order, we're
first.
talking about the
Lady-
minutes. We're not talking about later.
There's a first and a second on the table for the approval of the minutes. There is discussion to change the minutes to be more descriptive. I'm in favor with the minutes as they are presented. And hearing a second, we will call for a vote for that. All in favor to approve the minutes as is, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed.
No.
That passes 2-1. That brings us to our first policy up for discussion, which is 1740/4010, student and parent grievance procedures. Ms. Varnum, are you the subject matter expert on this one? And if you'd like to speak to it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the right page and move quickly. So the only change recommended on this one was related in the first paragraph in red, specifically related to the specifics in the Parents' Bill of Rights. For parental concerns regarding school health matters, refer to policy 1310, parental involvement. Because the processes for a grievance in parental concerns regarding school health matters is slightly different than the generic process for grievance.
Ms. Bradford?
Can someone tell me, I do understand the only change is referencing the Health Matters Policy 1310 that we've already been talking about this morning. Can somebody tell me where in 1310 this policy, 1740/4010, is referencing? Because I couldn't find it. Reading 1310, I couldn't find the reference. Is it a legal reference? Where's the reference? Or is it just a broad generality?
So are you asking where in 1310 this particular policy is referenced?
Well, the only change is the reference to policy 1310. So what is the reference? Is it just referencing the policy itself as a broad document? Or is there something written in 1310 that it's referencing? That's what I was
In
confused by.
1310, there's a section called parental concerns regarding school health matters, which is in the red statement.
And Ms. Varnum, since that's going to be something brought up in December, maybe that's something you can better fully address to specifically outline for the committee members where the parental concerns regarding school health matters is laid out in that policy. So if you
Okay.
make a note for that.
That'll work.
Does that work? Any other questions for Ms. Varnum? I would make a motion to approve this policy with no changes at the next board meeting.
Second?
All in favor to do that? Aye. Any opposed? So that's going to go existing policy for amendment at the next regular board meeting with no changes in the top left. Brings us to the student behavior policy. This was held in committee last month. This was brought up a few months ago in policy because this was a fall 2022 NCSBA edit to add the red line language. As a committee member noted, the suggestion of striking number 2 was brought up by myself last month. A conversation that happened was to gain feedback and clarity from different schools. And so the last few weeks, I've been going to schools and talking with administrators and just hearing about the policy itself and what it looks like for behavior. What I've had conversations with, and I've had conversations with many of you in this room about this, is the system that ensures equitable treatment of all students. How is that measured as it pertains to discipline? My understanding is federal law talks about proportionality and demographic subgroups. And we have been sanctioned, New Hanover County Schools, 4.5 times to 1 for IEPs. So that made me look into the process of IEPs and the different things that our schools are dealing with in the IEP vein. And the question and conversation and concern that has come up has been, when we're looking at IEP students, it is not necessarily a student with Down syndrome or a student with speech, with a speech pathology need. but also a student who has something like oppositional defiance or aggressive compulsive disorder. And the terminology OHI has been brought up. And with that being said, the process of evaluating equitable treatment comes with the outcome. I have been very clear for myself, looking at the input is really what matters. I was excited to hear about the RISE program and the fact that the district is looking at how we can replicate that in some of our other schools to kind of address the unique needs of our students. And I think that is the protocol that we should be sharing with our staff and our faculty about what the expectation is that we'd like for our staff to live into, and not necessarily tie the hands and saying the data, if the data doesn't look a certain way, then we must be doing something wrong. And one of the big feedbacks that I got from different levels of schools, elementary, middle, and high school, was the data doesn't tell the whole story. And so when I asked questions to go into further that, some staff would say, sometimes it's a data representation of a single child that makes up a lot of those discipline numbers that we have to submit. Sometimes there is a situational need that can be addressed and to kind of decrease those data outcomes. And so that is where the question becomes here. When we look at these policies and we write them, what I want to be focuses on is what is the expectation for the input, and knowing that the federal government equates equitable treatment to the outcome. I'm concerned because I would rather equip our staff with what we're expecting of them than the data outcome. So with that, committee members, any further discussion?
So I do. So if we are, which I think that's a more in-depth conversation. We do have a school administrator here, and I think I gave some examples last time. I think sometimes people are getting caught up on race with equity. That's not what this is talking about at all. It's not necessarily talking about students with IEPs. I mean, a student with a disability, their IEP is an IEP. They fall under federal guidelines, whether it's, speech impaired to whatever, to the farthest or most expensive disability. What I believe is that when you're taking that down, you're opening it up for parents to actually go back to 1740 or 4010 under grievance, because parents will grieve. If I know that if Principal May has a child that's getting out of the car, the parent said he's had a rough night, this is what happened, and has, I'll just say, an emotional breakdown, and you're calling back and you say he's gone for 10 days, I'm going to grieve you because I told you this is what happened. So what we have to do is find out what's the antecedent. And so if those numbers, if it's 1, 2, 3 students who are continuously being suspended, clearly that's not working. So you've got to find out what is going to work. So there are other things that we have to do. And I think principals do that all the time and that's equitable. So it's like, okay, we've suspended, they're back. And I often say things like, kids get suspended, they go home, take a break. You were at work, you were worn out, and they come back and they actually perform even whatever that issue was, they even do it better because they've had a break. But what we have to understand is that these are human beings and that they aren't lab studies. And at any given time, all of us have a bad day, outburst, things that we wish we could take back. But kids don't think past, I think it's what Julie talks about, the executive function isn't always mature enough to tell them, if I do this, then this is what happens. So I honestly believe whether you put equity in or not, people are going to do it just because that's who we are as people. So, but it has nothing to do with the disproportionate amount of students of color being having IEPs or the disproportionate amount of individuals being suspended. I think that it's just going to provide grievances. That's all it's going to do. Because if you say that you just looked at what they did, then as a parent, I'm going to grieve you because that's my right as a parent, because that's what House Bill, Senate Bill 49 allows me to do.
And I want to make one comment to add to that. Thank you, Dr. Faust. When the discussion here around equitable treatment, I know I've provided some of the information that's required of us to sign and confirm that we implement equitable practices, not just equitable discipline, but equitable practices. And the IEP itself is that equitable plan. So the other inherent reason for this to be identified here is equitable treatment of students means that you are considering whether in their need for education, but also the need for accountability for their actions. So on one hand, when the school says we maintain that this child has a disability, because the school determines that, the IEP team at the school, no district level staff make that determination, that's unlawful. The IEP team at the school maintains that the child has a disability that interferes with them learning. But then if that school also says, yet that disability doesn't come into play at all ever with regard to the child's behavior outcomes. So we think it affects their academic outcomes, and there's something physiologically, biologically, chemically, emotionally interfering with them able to learn, but we don't think it interferes with them being able to behave appropriately. And so that accountability measure is where that's disequitable. We believe you're disabled enough for us to teach you specifically, but we don't believe you're disabled enough for us to handle your discipline in the same manner. That's what equitable means in that.
And we also have manifestation.
Yes.
Is there, when we're submitting our data, is there a way for us to denote those differences? I'm genuinely asking because it's my understanding that it's not really denotable that way. And as far as if I have an IEP for behavioral issues or an IEP for something different, is the documentation, I have an IEP behavior checkbox, an IEP, I thought it was just an IEP checkbox.
No, absolutely not. The IEP is very detailed. I don't think anybody's going to tell you it's so simple you can't tell the details.
Oh, the IEP itself, but I'm sorry, I'm referring the data submission.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But with regard to the federal requirements, it is irrelevant to the feds, to the U.S. Department of Education and the Office of Civil Rights, what type of disability it is. Because
Right.
the feds say we fund you to provide special services for children with disabilities, and we expect that to include in a disciplinary manner.
So, if I'm hearing us talk, we're doing a lot of talking about IEPs, but this policy is for all of our students, and the majority of our students do not have IEPs, but they still could have a moment of executive function lapse, in there, just like Dr. Faust had alluded to. Everybody can have a bad day. And so I guess I'm struggling with the fact that the three of us sitting up here with no little to no educational background. I mean, I want to give you credit, Ms. Barnhart, for being a teacher for 4 years. But we really have to, we have to honor the equitable part of this so that we also honor the empathy and compassion that we show to our children, and that we honor the expertise and professionalism of our principals. That's why we put them there. And principals don't operate in a vacuum. They talk about this, within their school, and if they need help, then they call their executive director or one of our folks over here. So I'm just having a hard time with us trying to, play God, if you will, on what these policies are, and when we are not the experts in any stretch of the imagination. So, and I don't think taking out the words equitable treatment of all students is going to help us or influence the sanctions that we had. I don't think that played into it.
Thank you. Ms. Bradford?
Well, I was going to say we have a subject matter expert down the road, so I would like to hear from her if she doesn't mind.
What specifically? Ask me a question if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for the central office staff. What percentage of our students have IEPs? One of us brought up that we don't know, so I'd like to know, but how would this change in this policy affect your day-to-day?
Well, I was actually thinking about that. I don't think it would change anything about how I do my job at my school. I'm going to treat every student exactly the same, whether that's in policy or not.
And that's, I think, what we expect, and treat them all
Right.
equally, yeah. So,
I'll answer the question. We fluctuate between 12.5 and 12.75% of our ADM is, or our average daily membership, our enrollment, are students with disabilities. And the only reason that students with disabilities are discussed as a part of the federal sanction is because that's the only area of federal sanction with regard to discipline.
thank you. And thank you.
I guess my only other question of feedback with this is, we talked about measuring that. And this is where I have the biggest concern as a policymaker, and also on the shoulders of our staff, is we have this unique balance here, because I don't want to hinder staff from the ability to do their job. And this specifically, I don't think, number 2, speaks to the difference between safety-related equitable treatment and just misbehavior, a more generalized misbehavior. And so I want to be very clear that under no circumstance, in my opinion, as a safety-related issue, am I going to look at the demographic outcome and say, maybe we did something wrong. So that is where my hesitation is, and I understand that it seems like it might be a split opinion on this committee, and I'm welcome to bring that forth before the board to discuss that as well. But that is where my concern lies, and I just wanted to openly bring it to attention, because it is the unique opportunity to be in this position that we want to have policies. And like I've said, equitable opportunity, I absolutely support that, but also knowing specifically with IEPs, the wide range that the school system services, I think it's asking a whole lot, and understanding that there's only so much proactivity you can do, and the end result when you're talking about a whole classroom environment. And so it's just, I see the both extremes of this, and understand the need that we should be reevaluating and we should be inputting, but also to understand that we're going to have some needs that are very much out of the scope of a school realm, and we have to do the best we can with the resources that we're given. And so that's where I'm coming from on this.
And I want to, go ahead, Dr. Faust.
The one thing, and I think we tend to stop with just, on this one, with the principal, not the principal in this one. Principals are trained, so they've had classes and know the laws. But when we're literally talking about this policy, this is for all employees. And so not all employees understand what it means when you're talking about equitable treatment of all students. And so not all employees understand and have to think that way every single day, where a teacher doesn't teach the same lesson to all kids the same way. It's like they know what their first block needs versus fourth block. But someone who comes in may not know that. So when you step into our buildings, you're expected to have equity amongst all kids, and understanding the culture, and I guess the word would be the culture of the building. And that's where we, I think there's so much more background information to this one. And I think we're just literally hitting the surface. And I think it's more to, that's why I keep saying, regardless, as Principal May said, regardless, she's going to do it. But my question would be, would the bus driver, would the custodian, would the food nutrition worker, would, every employee that we have, would they know to treat every child with equity? And I'm not sure, I can't necessarily stand up here and say that would be it, because we just do it.
And to make a clarification, Policy 4300 is sort of one of the bookends of the discipline series, and it really kind of sets the frame on what the board believes in, what the board intends to enact as kind of a mission vision overview. Policy 4302, if you will remember, is the school plan for the management of student behavior. That's not a district plan, so there is no district plan for how every school responds to every student behavior. Every school has created that plan with their school members without a district level staff included as a part of their school improvement plan process, and principals have been reviewing those, making sure that they are evidence-based, making sure that they are using not only what research says to be beneficial, but also what evidences and outcomes consistently show. So each school has that opportunity. They don't use this policy 4300 to guide their individual decisions when responding to student discipline. They use their school plan for the management of student behavior, which they created.
And that brings me to my, it's a nice segue into my second point, where the red words that were inserted here from the NCSBA, that teachers, school-based administrators, parents, and law enforcement will be consulted when existing behavior policies are revised and new such policies are created. So this very discussion of taking out number 2, in my opinion, should include, if we're going to adopt this policy, it needs to include those people and not just the 3 of us talking to, 2 people over there. There's a lot of stakeholders that are missing. So in order for us to even move this forward to the board, in my opinion, we need to have more conversations, not just you, but the committee, perhaps the whole board, to, in a work session or in a community forum kind of event. We need to hear from these people and not just us sitting on high, donning our royal, apparel.
Ms. Crable, you're out of order as far as.
No, I'm just
Speaking
repeating
to the
something that
intent.
wrote.
Speaking to the intent.
I'm not speaking to the intent. I'm speaking to what we are about to approve. And if we don't follow what we're about to approve in its entirety, then we are being very hypocritical and we are not doing our job as intended, as responsible policymakers. I'm still talking as responsible policymakers.
Thank you. We have reached our time.
We
Actually,
are way over it.
Send-
Actually, we're 20 minutes over.
Thank you very much. We have reached our time with this. Is there a motion on the table?
I move that we adopt the policy with the changes as they're written. This is the second time we've had this discussion. We adopt this policy, it goes to the full board. We were elected to govern. We were elected to make policy. I believe that's what we should do.
I would second that. All in favor to adopt this policy with the changes presented to move before the board, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
That passes 2-1. Coming up to our next policy is 7205, Standards of Professional Conduct.
Point of order 43. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
This policy, I received feedback yesterday afternoon from a board member and honestly have not had the opportunity to sit down and discuss with central office staff. A lot of the questions and comments came from Z after multiple attempts to reaching out to some board members who said they had concerns with this. I received one input yesterday afternoon that actually has quite a bit of additions and suggestions on her feedback. So with this, I wanted to give the opportunity. I know there was some questions from central office staff about Section Z in particular, but that creates another ad. So I think we had conversations, Dr. Faison and Ms. Farnham, about some clarity questions, and the floor is yours to ask those now. 7205 Z.
The only concern that was brought up from my team of the counselors and school social workers was ensuring that the definition of teaching students or compelling students would not just include, their own representation as a professional, as a human being, and that might be considered teaching or indoctrination when they are just being themselves, which they are, perfectly capable of being as a professional. So I think there were just questions about the wording of this and how that might, if they are engaging in, as we discussed in the previous policy, if they are equitably treating all students with respect and acknowledging the human beings for who they are, if they might be considered indoctrinating. And that came from counselor and social worker group meetings.
And so you're looking at the measurability of when you're talking about the enforcement factor. I'm looking over at Dr. Barnes as far as what that looks like, just the metrics.
Well, as we spoke about, most of policy 72.5 is sort of a consolidation of other places that this policy speaks to and other policies that we have. Section Z is the anomaly. I really feel like this policy won't impact on my day-to-day work in regards to enforcing a sense of accountability and ownership with teachers and staff. So it becomes a question of whether it's a superfluous addition or not.
Could I ask a question about that? When you said it won't affect your staff, are you talking about the whole policy in and of itself or letter Z? Because I see letter Z affecting your staff a lot.
What I mean is, it's not necessary for this policy to be enacted for me to do my day-to-day work.
Okay.
I just wanted to make it clear that for letter Z, there's some portions in it, of course, that we will have to touch with our standard course of curriculum. So our teachers will still teach the standard course of curriculum. So I just wanted to make that clear for them to hear. And if there is any special guidance that we are thinking on the board that I need to be aware about, but of course, like I said, we have to teach the standard course of study. So I just wanted questions about that.
May I ask, why do we have to have letter Z? I mean, not for you, but everyone, because I didn't bring it. Chris and I talked. We didn't bring. I don't understand why we need letter Z in our policy.
I share that same concern. That was on my questions.
And I'll just say from a personal side, and of course I've read the others, it is painstaking to actually read it. It's offensive. It's, I don't know any other profession that would treat their employees as such. And I mean, I'm just appalled. I'll just say that. And I'm going to stop there because I don't want to say more.
Ms. Bradford?
There, rightly or wrongly, there are a plethora of people in our community, parents, stakeholders, taxpayers, who believe that in some schools, in some of our district, some of these things are actually happening. If they're not happening, this doesn't affect your day-to-day or your staff. But if, on the chance that it is happening, that you have a rogue person here teaching that one race or sex is inherently superior to the other, or an individual solely by the virtue of his race, sex is inherently racist or sexist, or that the United States government should be violently overthrown. These 13 things, if we're not doing it, it has no effect. But if we are, it sets out what we don't want taught. Now, Dr. Faison, if there's some things here that would cause you concern, specific ones, I would want to know which ones they are. Of course, we're going to teach the standard. So that's the first I'd heard that there was a conflict. But, all Americans are created equal. That's our Constitution. It's quoting our Constitution.
The Constitution was not written for me, Miss. I don't want us to get into this, but the Constitution was not written with me in mind. For me as a black male, the Constitution and all of those people that were sitting around the table did not represent me. When the Constitution was written, I would have been a slave. It would have been illegal for me to read. So when people say things and it just infuriates me because I live this every single day, but for people to sit around and try to tell me, and I hate that I'm getting emotional over this, but for people to sit around who don't look like me, have not been through what my parents went through, and want to tell me what people are doing, that's wrong on so many accounts. There were times where my parents couldn't vote. There were times where my parents had to go in through the back door. So for me to be able to sit at the table and be able to help enact rules and talk about this hurts me to my heart when people say exactly that it was written for them. I was 3/5 is what they thought of me. So when people are saying it was written for everyone and it was not written with race involved, it really was written. And so it's like, but no one is teaching that. No one is saying, I'm not saying that anyone up here has any racial or sexist. I don't believe, that's not what I believe. But when people are saying that, it's like, let's just peel back the entire onion. It's almost like when you watch a movie, and I'm going to lighten this because I have to lighten it. You watch a movie, your reaction may be different. Some may cry, some may laugh. I have no control over how you feel because the story was told. That's your feeling. So what I'm saying is when people are teaching and someone may get upset, I got upset oftentimes in analytical geometry. But I didn't say that the teacher, well, I did say that she couldn't teach it, but it was me who couldn't learn it. So I had to take some responsibility. I just believe that we shouldn't. About 3 years ago, I met with a group and I told them, please come to me, provide me, since you're saying all of this, provide me with the information and I will personally investigate. Well, it's been 3 years and no one's ever brought anything to me. So when people are saying this is happening and I gave them the opportunity, there's a process in here for them to grieve. There's a process in here for them to actually bring the information forward. But for us to just say this stuff, if you've never walked it, then why did we even give Williston a graduation? Williston High School, why? If we say that one race or sex inherently superior to another race, they close that school and the next week and tell them. We recognize that they were wrong. So then we actually believe that. So my question is, if we start to peel back these things, there was an individual should not be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partially because his or her race. I agree with that. Yeah. But we did it.
But we don't want to do it in the future.
But we're not. That's what I'm saying. But there are other policies where we have an ethics policy that captures this. We existed. And I need to stop. That's all I'm going to do.
Well, I appreciate the raw honesty here, Dr. Faust, with the suggested edits in the open conversation, and thank you for everyone participating. I think this should stay in policy so we can have some further conversation and maybe really address some things that we can collectively feel good about.
I just want to say this, and you brought it up. I just want to think about our teachers, what you're asking. I mean, our teachers have to teach these things, and for them to feel like they're treading on water. I mean, they're scared to do anything wrong. They're not doing anything wrong now, but when you put things like this in place, you're implying that they are, whether we want to or not. All I ask is, let's just trust them. And I go back with Dr. Faust. If there's incidents that you see we'll investigate. But I think you find, most of the time, there's nothing there. So to put all of our teachers in a situation that puts them in a place where they feel nervous, concerned to teach what the state is mandating them to teach, I question that, and I just ask you to think about them. You know, maybe we do have some parents out here who believe that's going on. I'm sure we do. But to put all of our teachers in that situation for that, when we have no fact for it, I just don't think it's fair. So I shouldn't say that, but I'm just thinking about our teachers.
Do you have specifics here? So
Yes.
I can circle them?
When I look at, you say one race is inherently better than the other, or that the United States was created for a particular sex or race, those are things we have to teach.
We teach that one race is inherently superior to another?
No, we have to teach that whether the United States was built, how it was built on. We have to teach about slavery and how we did. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is, when we look at our history, and we teach the history of the U.S., these things are going to come out. We have to teach how the country was created.
Right.
That we can't.
This is present day, not past. This is now, going forward.
But
We
they're
don't wanna
teaching-
teach these things.
But we have to teach the history, right? So when the teacher's teaching the history of the United States, they have to teach some of these things. Do we both agree on that? That they have to teach that this is the history of the United States. These things are going to come up.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm
going
saying.
to bring us back, committee members, I'm going to bring us back. I have made a motion to hold this policy in committee so that there can be changes and addressing, and I appreciate the open dialogue. Yes.
I would like to be heard before we go with that motion. And I would like to just point out some of the things, and two things. One, in support of what we have to teach: slavery, genocide, suffrage, Western expansion, colonization, all of those things, could fall into the category of students feel uncomfortable, about that. But I also want to kind of reiterate, or not reiterate, talk behind Dr. Faust on the Constitution. The Constitution wasn't written for women either. And so we up here as three white women this was not written for us. It was not written for the black women. It was not written for any of our immigrants that came here from other countries, to make our country good. So for us to say that we have to follow the Constitution, it wasn't written for everybody in this country. And so that is what bothers me. We have to teach that to our students so that history does not repeat itself. And we don't put into play laws and policies and procedures that inherently exclude people. And if you look at, South Carolina, was trying to do some of those kind of things, and they're, under so much attack and scrutiny, for this too. And I don't think that we want to be in the news for this kind of stuff. We want to remain in the news about the progress that our students are making in the classroom, all of our students. We don't want to be in the news for how we're going to hold people back and how we're going to, stifle our teachers' ability to impart information to our students in the professional manner with which they were trained. I went to school for engineering. Ms. Barnhart went to school for education. You went to school, I'm guessing, for journalism. I'm not sure.
I went to school for education.
Okay.
Actually, I have a degree for education.
Okay, so we all did that, and we would not have been able to do that under the Constitution as it was written. So I will second your motion to hold this in policy, but I don't think the conversation is going to go anywhere with just the three of us.
Okay,
Madam
so,
Chair?
yes, ma'am.
Just 1 minute of discussion and a slight rebuttal. I uphold the Constitution. The Constitution has not always been applied fairly, but going forward, that is the goal going forward. It's great to look at the mistakes of the past. I didn't get the right, my lineage, the women in my family got the right to vote, Dr. Faust, after you did, after your ancestors did. Women didn't get the right to vote for a long time after that. I understand that, but I still uphold the Constitution, and I am.
There's a motion and a
Agenda item.
second on the table to hold this policy in committee. So all in favor with that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 3-0. We're moving on to 2 policies. And ladies, both of you had asked for these policies to be put on. We do have things that are time pressing matters, so I'm going to make a motion to postpone the discussion of policy 3540 and 2315 to next month's meeting. Do I hear a second for that? Hearing no second, we're moving on to policy 3540.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I move
ma'am.
that we extend our time by probably 30 minutes.
I would second that. All in favor to extending the meeting time by 30 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes. So the Comprehensive Health and Safety Education Program, Ms. Bradford, you had brought this forward upon request and seeing the red language in there, and my apologies. You had told me that also in, scroll up, Ms. Baggy, or down a little bit, in the parents or guardians, you see the, right, down a little bit more. The red language change, right there. It should be replicated in 2 places, and so Ms. Bradford
To come up to-
motioned to me that,
I was the one who brought that to your attention also.
thank you. So it should say in both the 2 paragraphs above, which says the following sex education programs, it should have that same language.
Where is that? You need to point that out more
I'm-
specifically.
Okay. 2 paragraphs above the current red language, and it says, permission from parents or guardians of children in grades 5-8 shall receive prior to the children's placement into the following sex, and it should say gender, sexual orientation, and LGBTQ inclusive language education programs. The same language mimicked in both
Where-
of those.
Where's that
It's the
language?
second paragraph on page 37.
Second paragraph, 4th paragraph. The language, the request was to put it in both places. The same sentence is repeated there. And somehow it's just a typo that didn't get added.
And I have a question. I don't know where did this come from? Because we don't teach this in 9th currently. We don't teach this in high school. So I'm trying to figure out, are we saying we're going to teach this?
It's in this book.
Yeah, but that's not what we teach in our high schools. This is says our high schools, we don't teach that. So I was confused. That's why I came up here, because that's not accurate.
Second paragraph is grades 5-8.
Says, well, I'm looking at parents or guardians of high school students shall receive a letter from their child's school stating that their child will
Okay, you're
automatically
right.
be assigned to
You're
the
right.
sex,
You're right.
gender.
It should be in the second, not the 4th. You are correct. I am mistaken.
Okay, so that should be removed,
It
because
should
we do not
go
teach
up into
that.
the second paragraph was where it should go.
Permission
It's in
from
this
the,
book on page 5 and page 6.
so I want to make sure, because the only place that we teach that is where parents opt into that in
Yes, ma'am.
stepping stones. That's the only place. So where are we saying we're putting that? And that is on the opt-in form. We're putting that on our opt-in form. It's on our website. So where are we putting this line? Because the only place we teach that is in stepping stones, with the program that the parents opt into. So I want to be clear, where are we saying we're putting it?
In stepping stones, see right underneath it are the 2 bullet points, and the last words there are this curriculum stepping stones. This is just clarification. Parents tell me they don't know that this is being taught, and it's right here in the book. And rather than me go around and show this to every parent, if we make it clear to them, if we're transparent and say, hey, you know, in the stepping stones, it's in the 6th grade, page 5, it's in the 8th grade, page 5, and for some reason for the 7th grade, it's 2 full pages. And you have it, I did give it to the staff to put it up there.
Yes,
if they
it's
needed
up
to.
there. And so, okay, so I just want to be clear. So can we push that down then and put stepping stones as a third? I don't want parents to think we're doing that in both.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Make it
Okay,
its
so
own bullet
stepping
point.
stones, and then we can add that language. I just want parents to know, you don't have to show them that book. That book is online for them to see. The slides that have anything to do with LGBTQ are online, and it is also, for my conversation, we're also putting it on the application where they opt in. So we're not trying to hide anything from parents, and you know we had that out in our curriculum.
I just want to be
But
extra transparent.
Right, exactly. I just wanted to make sure we did not say we were teaching it in the high school, because it is not a part of our
No,
state
and, you know,
curriculum.
I completely didn't see that word. I started with the second paragraph, and then it ended up in the 4th, and that was my mistake. Please forgive
Okay,
me.
so just to be clear, the only place that we're going to have that language is with stepping stones, the opt-in curriculum for parents.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, what I submitted had in parentheses stepping stones 6 through 8, but somehow it just didn't quite make
Okay.
what I had typed out
Okay.
and submitted, didn't quite get there. And I apologize for that.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
So the suggestion conversation that we're looking at, striking the red that is currently highlighted, because that's in regards to high school, but that same red language would be moved up.
Cut it and paste it. In
It would
between the
say
word sex and in the word
sex,
education.
gender, sexual orientation, and LGBTQ inclusive language education programs. And from what you're saying, Dr. Faison, you would also, rather than saying or stepping stones, you wanted a new bullet for stepping stones.
Yes, because I want parents to know that, and that's the opt-in
So my
program.
one question, as far as feedback of this, does this change what we're already doing? Like,
No,
okay.
it doesn't change anything. It's
thank you.
just, no, because all this information, like I said, this is an opt-in program, so this information is on our website for parents along with the slides. So I just want parents to know that, because this is when parents choose to have this.
Yeah, a couple points to that is that, don't we still offer a curriculum night where we review this? So, and that is sent home with all students, so parents do have the opportunity to come to school or to come to a central location. So for them to say they don't know about it, some might not, but I just wanted to clarify, because the curriculum committee works very diligently on that.
That's a good point. We actually did 2 this year, because we did one with all of the curriculum where you actually start, Ms. Bradford, and then we do one just for the sex education curriculum, so parents will have the opportunity. Because we want to make sure, because we have parents that, there are some parents who are concerned, but we have a lot of parents who want to make sure their kids understand a lot of different things. So we have a number who also opt in.
I know it's hard
Madam
for
Chair,
central
I
office
wasn't done
staff
talking.
to
Ms. Bradford.
grasp that.
Miss, it's my turn, I'm still talking. So in that, point of order, thank you. So along that same vein, I'm wondering where the red wording came from. It doesn't quite, to me, it doesn't flow even in the sentence where it says, will be automatically assigned to the sex education portion of the health curriculum.
I don't know.
So, I don't
I
understand
don't
where those
know
words
where the
came
red
from.
wording came from. I can tell you, and I also want, and I think I just want us to make sure we understand, I think we figured it up, and that portion of that curriculum is 5 or 10% of the whole curriculum. So I also want us to be careful, because I don't want us to imply to parents that that's what the curriculum is about, because it is 5 to 10%. We figured it up a while back when we had that conversation. It is not a lot of the curriculum. So putting it here, we might be misleading parents, and that is the main aspect of the curriculum. I just need to say that. It is such a small part of the curriculum. And again, they have that information, and they can see the entire curriculum along with the slides on these areas. Not all the slides, but the slides on these areas, we make that available for parents, because we're not hiding anything. So I do want to stress that when we put it here, I don't want parents to think that is, we're teaching a full-blown to that level, because we're not.
So my question remains, who inserted this word, and where did we get our advice from on that? Because it's my understanding that the law says K through 3. The law does not say that, Is it 3 or 4?
It's K4.
Okay, sorry. All right, so K through 4. So why are we trying to put that law into middle school? So I just want to know who inserted those words and where and why.
That was a committee member discussion to bring to the table for conversation.
So would that be Ms. Bradford submitted those words?
Yes, ma'am.
It's not a bad thing for us to own up to what we do. So
Madam Chair, may I speak?
I'm happy with you to speak. Yes, ma'am.
In our curriculum, the top of page 5, top of page 6, Ms. Kraber, would you please look? That language is right there. It's right there. I cut and pasted it here because I want full transparency for the parents who don't have as much involvement in the school district, so that they will know. I just recently helped a family. They had a phone, cracked screen, and very sketchy access to internet. So when you say, it's on the website, it's on the website, people who are challenged technology-wise have trouble finding things on our websites. People who don't have the technology, even though it's one-to-one, and we're Progressive County, there are still people out here that I have an employee, the only internet they have is their telephone. And some of these people have old phones and they have cracked screens. And it's just not the best way to always get in touch with all of the families of our 25, 26, hopefully 27,000 students. And so I'm just trying to be transparent.
Committee members, thank you. Thank you for your input. We're reaching the time on this. Since this does not affect how we are doing the current model, I have no problem inserting and adding that clarification language. If it needs to be wordsmith a little bit different, rather than saying sex education programs, we can say which include gender, sexual orientation, and LGBTQ inclusive language. I'm fine with adding that and also adding your suggestion to mark down the stepping stones. With that, I would be in favor of moving this policy forward with those changes added.
Are you making a
I would
motion?
make a motion to move that forward with those changes added.
Madam Chair, I had one more change, but we started with this one and it would come back. I know you're concerned about time, but while we're in this, I can always bring it back. But while we're in this,
Please
in
speak to-
studying this and looking at it, if you go to the first page of this, under A, third paragraph in the middle, Ms. Crable brought it up. Instruction, second sentence, health education program in kindergarten through fourth grade. See also policy, there it is, 1310, parental involvement. I looked up puberty. I thought I knew when puberty, the average for kids, it's the sixth grade. And yet, okay, y'all are the experts.
Yeah.
I have no ability to research and do things like that. But what I found was that it's, between 10 and 12. Okay? And this says fourth grade.
Yes.
So I'm going to also add to the change to switch that to the fifth grade, which would be ages 10 to 11. Let our children have puberty before we just go and teach them. Let them have their innocence. Let them have life before we dump all this on them.
So I do have to step in. I mean, when you're talking about that course, there are some young females who start their menstrual cycle as early as fourth grade, third grade. So you can't just say that it's going to start at this time. And so the goal is to help educate them. There are some young men who start to produce early, so you can't just say that. So there's therapists who actually have helped write that, and I don't know if just doing a general research that we should do that, because I know as a father, my daughter started in elementary, and I'm just going to say she's gone. I mean, I'm just saying.
She's
But
not
you
watching.
can't- she's not. No.
Thank you,
I mean,
Dad.
you just have to, but you can't say that. And I mean, parents have to understand as fathers, you need to read this information also, because what's happening is we don't, and then we don't know, and then we don't know how to have that conversation with our children. It just happens, and whether it's single male moms working, you have to understand this. So I think I have to push back on that one.
That's okay. The paragraph before deals with the anatomy of it and the biological of children growing towards puberty. I stumbled on this in studying the policy for the other changes, and I respect your opinion, but I still put that in my motion.
I would ask, and I hear that you're still going to do it, I would ask first two things. First of all, I would want us to go back and look at, unless Mr. Vogel can speak to it, make sure there's nothing with the state that because I don't even know where we are, but making a quick change and not being able to look at state guidelines, talk to the people who
agree.
do this every day I don't think we should do that. So I would ask if we could do that and talk to the people who teach these courses each and every day. We have family life specialists.
Okay.
To change that on the fly, I would ask if we could just step back if we can. That's just my opinion.
So then, committee members, the motion and the second on the floor was to present this to the board with the changes suggested. So not addressing the second
Yeah.
concern.
I will get with you And then if I feel like, we're
Thank you.
there, I will bring this back at
All right.
another time.
I appreciate
We've got
that.
holidays and things to get through, so.
So let me,
just go
committee
ahead.
members, let me
And I'll need to know
reiterate.
exactly, I don't know where you are, Ms. Bradford, so you'll have to tell me exactly where you are, but I want to make sure I talk to the family life specialist and to look at our state policies and talk to
Okay, and
Mrs.
I
Newman.
haven't spoken to the attorney, so we need to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I think we should
So-
all speak to the attorney and not just one person on this committee.
Okay, that's great. So the motion and the second on the floor is to add language that says gender, sexual orientation, and LGBTQ inclusive language included into the sex education programs, and also changing stepping stones to better life, just to be a third bullet point with that. And with those two changes, the recommendation is make those changes and bring those before the board, or the motion is to make those changes and bring those before the board. So all in favor of doing that?
I'd like to have more discussion briefly, is
Well,
that
we
we
have-
have gotten ourselves into trouble.
Ms.
It
Crable, we
needs to
have
be
reached
in section,
overtime.
in this box on the right-hand side, that we will, if we are going to vote yes, to move, and before we bring it, this committee needs to look at the changes to make sure that we are all in agreement with what is being brought forward, because we're talking about a lot of different stuff in here.
I'm happy
And I
to
don't
send that
like
out
to move things
before-
forward because things get left out. Case in point, what's coming up.
I'm happy to, this is what is in the motion, to move that forward before the board with the changes that we just discussed as a committee. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No,
Okay,
And
so
Ms.
that's going to be moved forward, hold on, move forward before the board, 3540. That brings us to 2315, which is the opening invocation before board meetings.
Madam Chair, I just want to clarify, the motion was not to add these programs into our curriculum, but just to clarify that our curriculum is actually, this is in our curriculum, and this is where it can be found. That was all the motion was.
Thank
then
you.
I think point of order, then we need to restate the motion and revote. So I make a motion that we rescind the vote we just had to get the appropriate motion that Ms. Bradford just made.
Do I hear a second on rescinding the motion? Hearing no second, we will move on to
Would you
policy
please just state for the
2315.
record what the motion was we just voted on?
I will surely restate it. We just voted on policy 3540 to adding the language that says gender, sexual orientation, and LGBTQ inclusive language as part of our sexual education programs, and then to bullet stepping stones to my better life, a third bullet point. With those changes being made, that will be what is brought forth for the board meeting. The invocation prayer policy, this was another policy that was brought forth by a committee member to open the discussion.
So I'm just going to go ahead and say I was the committee member, don't mind saying my name in that. I had asked for this at the last meeting, and again, like two different meetings. When we talked about this policy the first time, I made the motion that we strike in its entirety number 5. And number 5 said at the time, in the event no invocational speaker is signed up for a particular meeting, a member of the board can make the invocation. And so during our discussion, we had talked about a moment of silence, but I was negligent in putting those words in to my motion. So I would like to insert number 5 back in the event no invocational speaker is signed up for a particular meeting, a moment of silence will be observed. And so over here on the right-hand side where it says deleted number 5, I believe that what we should have done, and I didn't do this either, put in what it was and show a strikeout, because just deleting number 5, people might not know what that means. Same with down at the bottom where cross-references should have been in there, cross-reference, struck out, not with the word deleted, because people don't understand what that means. But my main thing is number 5 needs to be reinserted back in there.
Any other discussion, committee members?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I disagree completely. I've made my feelings known. This is, I think, the third time we've talked about this. And no one is saying that every time there's not someone to do something, a board member will do this. Only one time in the last year, at the request of the chair, did it happen. It was condemned by people on the board, at least one person on the board, and it's the privilege and the right in this country. I am a strong constitutionalist. It is a privilege and a right, and it's allowed by law. Writing it into our policy won't change that, but it puts our policy in conflict with law, and I am vehemently opposed to this. I kind of wish we had left it the way it was, but we said, okay, let's compromise. Some people on the board feel strongly about separation of church and state, which I don't believe in, but let's just take this out so it doesn't make them feel uncomfortable. But now we're back trying to put more teeth into it to restrict my freedom of speech as an elected official, and I object to it strongly.
Thank you, committee members, for your feedback. My interpretation of this, thank you. It is my turn and we're coming up on time here. So my interpretation of this, I've received feedback from one individual and two others on the board member who would like to see this. This comes down to a split differences of opinion. The goal and the intent behind the creation and the conversation of having an invocation policy was to look at the legal grounds of what an invocation looks like and to lay out that expectation of what an invocation entails. That was the goal and the purpose of this policy. It was to remove the conflict over who was saying it or what faith leader was coming up before us. I think this line specifically targets an instance, and Ms. Bradford alluded to it just a few moments ago, and rather than being an attempt to worry about who is going to say that, the policy is in place and was designed to ensure what is the purpose of invocation. I do not feel this line is necessary, and therefore I would make a motion to reject this suggestion.
Second.
So all in favor?
Discussion.
We have come up on our time.
I am sorry, point of order.
Yes, ma'am.
I am tired of being silenced with that. So we are going to discuss this. And
Well, then I need to hear a motion to extend the time of this discussion.
No, because you guys are just going to vote no. So I'm just going to say this out loud and go ahead and gavel me out.
I'm going to
But
say
I'm gonna
point of
tell
order.
you
You are out of order, Ms.
that
Cradle.
we are going to set ourselves up for
I'm going to remind you, you
legal.
are out of order. You are going to lose your privilege to speak on this topic. Please
Lose my
keep your
privileges.
name.
We already voted that policy didn't
So
count.
all in favor to reject this policy suggestion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed.
No.
So that policy will remain as is. That brings us forth to the next section, was the substantial changes. Because of our time constraints, I'm going to make the motion to recommend discussing 4040/7310, and then 4240/7312, 4720, 7510, as well as in the minor revisions, 7232, and the justification is all of those take an effect December 1st date. I will make a motion to postpone the rest to the next
Could you repeat
meeting.
those, please?
Yes, ma'am.
I will second that.
4040/7310, 4240/7312, 4720, 7510, and 7232, and I will make a motion to postpone the rest for discussion at a later date in policy.
Second.
Okay, all in favor to amend the agenda and postpone those?
Discussion. So could someone please explain to me or show me where these are required by December the 1st? Who's the authoritative source on that?
Yes, we're looking at the fall 2023 policy updates, and so these were the law, and it says became effective December 1st, and so to get those policies with the changes, and after talking with the staff, I don't think there was any objection to the changes that are presented in the documentation. Okay, so all in favor?
Policy
to
4720, let's pull that one up.
Well, right now, we're making a motion to postpone the rest of the policy and focus on those five that I just outlined.
All right, okay.
So, all in favor?
And you know we
five?
have 10 minutes.
Hold on just a minute. 4040, 4240, 4720, and then in the second level, 7230, so I missed one. Was it 4720? I got that. 4240.
7510, the leave policy.
Oh, that's it,
That's in the top.
7510. 7510, I didn't have. Okay, yes, I'm good.
Okay, so all in favor to postpone the rest of those policies to a later date, later policy date? Say aye.
Hi.
Aye. All right, so that brings us to the first substantial changes, 4040/7310. If you know on the packet, it's page 47, it says Board of Education, and then on page 48, you'll see the red line denote misconduct resulting in dismissal, disciplinary action, or resignation, and so forth and such, and you can see what was deleted there. I did have a question on this. It says within 5 days of dismissal, determination of disciplinary action, or acceptance of resignation. I know there's been conversation in the community as far as being explicit that board members are also notified of that, and so I didn't know if it would be appropriate to add in that language of just saying that board members would be notified with that. 4040.
And I would love that.
Sorry, sir.
I think this whole policy is just amazing in terms of keeping us from what we've done in the past. It just helps us stay on the right direction going forward.
So I don't understand what you're proposing.
I'm just asking if it is fitting to add in language that's saying, in addition to submission of the disciplinary resignation misconduct to the board, to acknowledge that the Board of Education members would be identified as well, in addition.
So,
Is there a place you wanted to put it?
so typically, if there's something of that magnitude, like what has happened in the past, when we have closed session, we bring it to all the board. What we don't want to do is put that in an email, put that in, and then we don't just share it with one individual, so we share it with the entire board. So technically, I mean, we typically will do that. I would typically make the board aware of those serious consequences.
Right, and I know that being a board member, I just was wondering if we wanted to include language in the policy so that the public knows that, yes, the board does indeed get notified of these things, because I know that became a discussion in the community a few months back, and I said, I cannot speak about closed session, however, yes, we are made aware.
So there are unwritten rules that, as school leaders, we and as the board, and that's where that rule, of course, is written in when we are in a private setting. Again, I know they were saying, well, how do you know? Some may do it, you may not, you leave someone else. But I still believe that the board, in those situations, you actually know, like you have to know, because there's conversations that go on, but I'm not necessarily sure it would need to be put in a policy. It's just, we do it. We just do it. I can also defer to Dr. Barnes in that one, but I don't.
That was my only question,
Yeah.
and so committee members, further discussion about this.
I'm opposed to that, what you're suggesting.
Thank you. Ms. Bradford, did you have any further discussion?
I liked the idea, again, considering the past 30, 40 years of history in this county, I don't think we can do enough to have consequences for behavior and reporting and keeping people aware. And in 10 years, none of us will probably be sitting here, except for maybe Dr. Barnes. And so I don't think it would hurt to have it in there. I don't think it would hurt. I don't think it would affect day-to-day life as we know it today, but we don't know what the future holds. So I see no reason not to. I don't find it objectionable in any way. And if we just say, hey, it's in the policy, board members can't talk to you about what happens in closed, just.
Dr. Barnes, would you like to speak to that?
Policy won't dictate behavior. It should, but it's really not there. I mean, if board members professionally should not speak about what happens in closed session, I don't really think a policy would change whether people would do that or not.
I agree. But that's not what this is. This is saying that when when something is reported, as I understand what Ms. Barnhart said, and the way I read it, is when something's reported to the state, that the board is notified in closed session or some other, private way, that it has happened. That's what I think this says. Am I wrong?
That already occurs now.
Yeah, I would like for Mr. Vogel to weigh in on this because it is, there are two schools of thought. Some of it is law-related and some of it is not. Is that closed session, the understanding is that we don't talk about things. But if we talk about things that occurred in closed session, other than employee protected information or student protected information, we are not violating the law. I do believe I heard that at the CALNA training on Robert's Rules of Order, where one board person there touted that they had, special media that they talked to and told them everything except for personnel and students. So I would like Mr. Vogel to weigh in on that.
Madam Chair, would you like me to weigh in?
Yes, sir.
From what I understand, you're proposing that in that section 4C4, where it says that there will be a report to the State Board of Education, that the local Board of Education, you, will be notified as well when that report is made to the State Board of Education. I think that's what you're suggesting, and I don't have any legal qualms with that.
Well, that is, and that would be something, if it's the will of the committee, to add the language to script it so that there is no legal quorums. That's just, anyway, that's my suggestion, yes.
Is that a motion? Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion to add the language to include, in addition to the State Board of Education being notified of misconduct, that local boards of education will be.
Where are you putting that exactly?
I am fine with the suggestion edits from the attorney of where that would go, but the wordsmithing of that.
I would like to see
Misconduct.
where it's going.
It's C4,
I would,
page 47.
I see that part.
if you think that this fits here, I would think the misconduct to the State Board of Education and local boards, Board of Education, within 5 days, and just continue that sentence. State Board of Education and local Board of Education members.
I agree.
And with that, I would make a recommendation to add those changes and bring those forth before the committee, or before the board.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 2-0, or I guess 3-0. So we made a vote to skip the immunization policy for this time, so that brings us to 4240.
Madam Chair, we have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we extend the time to whatever you think we need to get through these next 4.
I would make a motion to extend it for 10 minutes to wrap up at 11:40.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of extending the time by 10 more minutes to get through these policies? Aye.
Aye.
No.
All opposed? Okay, that passes. So 4240, child abuse and safety. The changes on this is, on the packet, is 55. Board of Education, and you can see the red highlight there, or actual notice of complaint. I did not have any quorums about this. Board members, or committee members, comments? I would make a motion to move this forward before the board, as is presented. All in favor?
I'll second that.
Oh, thank you. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes with no changes. We made forward board. Next policy, we're skipping over student searches. We're going to 4720, which is the surveying of students policy. This adds specific language because with the Parents' Bill of Rights, there was a few exceptions to the survey policy. So we had already mimicked the language of the bill and have been in compliance with that for a while. This one, I just wanted clarification. Because of these specific topics, does this mean that they do not require consent? Is that a correct interpretation of the first paragraph changes on page 62? Sorry, committee members.
So we still, I think I'm answering this one correct. We still have to give prior written consent before the student is permitted to participate in the survey. Is that what you're?
That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
I just wanted to verify that. And then my only other question is, I do remember conversation committee members about having a district either consent in / opt-out form for surveys. And so I didn't know if that was something that was just a conversation that we had, or if that was something we wanted to see in our policy, to have a universal. I thought we had it, and I was looking over and I could not see that.
Madam Chair, I have one thing, but where did we leave that? Was it district consent form or something like that? Where did we leave that? Where is that? Did it happen? Anybody?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I remember the discussion. It was like
I remember,
Fits all kind of form.
I remember a discussion of saying, how can we help support our schools to keep track of opting in or opting out? And so the conversation, and I couldn't find it in policy, so I don't think it was written in policy, but the conversation became, can we have a universal district opt-in or opt-out form of expectation as far as surveys go? So that's just from pure recollection when we took up this policy, I don't know, 4 months ago.
longer down.
So currently, all policies require opt-in, so there wouldn't necessarily be, and we don't have any surveys right now. But then with changes to general statute and the Parents' Bill of Rights, we do have legislative changes to U.S. Department of Ed surveys, but that will resolve itself through the language that's already in the policy.
Madam Chair, I just had one question. Page 62, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down, where it says provide written consent. That is opt-in, but we don't say it's opt-in. So would it help to clarify that by just putting in parentheses opt-in?
I don't think it's necessary.
Because our policy is opt-in.
Yeah, yeah.
So with that, I mean, I have no objections to these changes. I just wanted verification with some of those things.
I'm good.
Committee members, I'll make a motion to bring forth with the changes as presented to the board meeting.
Second.
All in favor to do that? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Then we move on to the leave policy. In our packet, it's page 67 is where they added D, paid parental leave, excuse me. And so I just wanted to verify, does this accounts for maternity and paternity leave, Dr. Barnes? Since it's parental
No,
leave?
this is a separate addition to maternity leave.
Okay.
Which would be considered family medical leave.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Bradford?
For the sake of time, I have a couple of questions that I would love to have a discussion with Dr. Faucet's permission, with Dr. Barnes offline, about comp time, so I understand how we do that.
It's illegal.
Oh, what do you mean, it's illegal to talk about, or it's illegal to have it?
Where's the football? This is how it happens. Really quickly, sorry.
Nothing's been
We
put.
have to give the employee and Ashley helped me to make sure I'm saying this correctly. We either have to say we can pay you, or we can provide time where you can use that time. But we have to give them the employee has to say which one they want.
Right.
Yeah. But we just can't say, oh, you're going to get comp time.
And there are two types of employees. There are employees who are exempt and non-exempt. Exempt employees don't earn comp time because their job is salary-based, not hourly-based.
Thank you.
Any other discussion with this? I will make a motion to bring this forward before the board as presented.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. And the last policy that we're coming up with today is 7232, discrimination and harassment in the workforce. This is a minor change, so you can see some of the legal references, changes, highlights. And I will make a motion to bring that policy forth before the board.
And I will second it and would like just 1 second of
A discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know, maybe this is Dr. Barnes, page 70B, the full paragraph after the section 2. It says a single incident of harassment is physical, threatening, or humiliating. Isn't humiliating a fairly subjective word? It's not something I want to fight over. When I read all these policies, every single one of them last night, and, isn't humiliating subjective? It's 2 paragraphs up on the bottom of page 70.
Yes. First off, I won't last 10 more years if you guys keep calling on me. It normally would base itself on what would a normal objective person consider that.
Okay.
So certain individual instances can rise to the level of retaliation or hostile work environment, considering the severity of it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. With that, there's a first and a second on the table to move this forward as presented to the board. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 3-0. That brings us forth to the December Policy Committee meeting discussion. Last month, they brought forth the question of whether or not we would need a December Policy Committee meeting, and I had not had the opportunity to discuss to see if the staff availability could switch it to the 12th because our students are going to be out on the week of the 19th. And so at this point, I've heard back and we're able to move it for that date. And so I'd like to make a motion to change the December policy meeting to meet on December 12th at 10 a.m.
And I will second that. It's not ideal, but I'll make it work.
Okay.
I'll make it work. We have some going forward.
Right, that was my point, is we've got other things going on.
Because we do need that.
We need this meeting, so if we need a different time frame,
So
I'm open to that.
we don't just because students aren't in session doesn't mean we can't meet on the regularly scheduled date. I know that you can't come that date, but Ms. Bradford and I could.
Some of them may not be.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to weigh in is when we're having to decide, is it imperative that more of the committee is there or more of the central office staff is there? Because some of us can't come on the 12th.
With that, is there a suggestion for a time change, Dr. Faust, and I'll amend my motion to that rather than.
It's 10 o'clock, the
With
motion
10
is.
o'clock, yes.
I would say if we can,
Oh, golly.
11 would be great, or.
I could do that.
We'll just bring our meeting here, meet with the board.
Okay.
Does it need to
Then
be
I
same
will
day,
make a
correct?
motion. I amend my motion to say, to move the policy committee meeting to December 12th at 11 a.m. Is there a second for that?
Second, just a minute of discussion. What follows on that day? I don't have my calendar with me. I'm just looking at my phone's calendar.
Another would follow, there are emails that I sent to the board for meetings.
Oh, those options.
101.
Yeah, and
Yeah, 101.
okay, yeah, okay.
Well, I'll just make it known right now, I can't come on December the 12th, so you ladies will
All day?
have to do it. I can't come before 1 o'clock because I have standing meetings that are already there and that can't be switched. So you ladies can opt to meet without me if you'd like.
So Dr. Fast, can we move it to that 1 o'clock time?
Okay, the rest of that afternoon is fine.
Yeah, I can rearrange everything else I have. I mean, I don't want to, but I will.
So I'll pull my previous motion and restate. I make a recommendation to move the policy meeting to December 12th at 1 p.m. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the policy committee meeting will meet on December 12th at 1 p.m. That brings us to adjournment, but prior to that, I'll list out the policies and where they stand.
Yes.
In the top left corner, these are policies at the regular meeting with no changes, meaning just bringing forth as presented. 1740/4010, 4,300, 4240/7312, 4720, 7510, 7232. Policies held in committee is 7205. Existing policies for amendments at the next board meeting is 3540, as well as 4040/7310.
And those are ones that we are expecting some wording changes on.
Yes, ma'am. Does any member need a repeat of those?
For the fourth one on the far right, it was 4240, 7312.
10.
Yeah, no, 7312, you're right.
Oh,
And then
sorry.
4720. Yes. And with that, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Before we adjourn, I'd like to just respectfully make the comment that we went over on several of the policies, and point of order was not called, but point of order was called with my policy 2313-15. So I just wanted to make us all aware that we are not consistently following our time constraints.
There's a first and second on the table for adjournment. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 3-0. Thank you for your time.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.